So in the last few years, there's been a rising opposition to the European Convention of Human Rights. And this has been spearheaded by figures like Nigel Farage. And I want to break down his case, his evidence, and his argument for why we should leave the European Convention of Human Rights. So let's get straight into the video.
So we've got an Albanian criminal. He's deported from the UK. He comes back in illegally, gets a Lithuanian girl pregnant, and now we can't deport him because of Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which means his right to a family life, and he can stay.
Okay, so this is an individual case of someone who's clearly a criminal. They're gaining the system, exploiting the system, and what they're doing is wrong, obviously. But does this mean, is this evidence therefore to not adhere to the European Convention of Human Rights? Well, clearly not. This is not how we make policy decisions, especially ones made based on human rights. So typically when you're developing a debate and a policy, you look at a whole slew of data sources. You look at longitudinal studies, meta-analyses, and you aggregate all that data and come to a conclusion about what the policy should be and how we should move forward. This isn't what's happening here. He's taken an anecdote about an Albanian and he's extrapolating that as evidence for leaving the European Convention of Human Rights. This is not critical thinking. This isn't how science works. If anything, it's anti-scientific and anti-intellectual. And often this is how conservatives will present their so-called arguments based on anecdote. When they want to demonise trans people, it's always anecdote. When they want to demonise Muslims as terrorists, it's all anecdote. It's never based on data because the data isn't there. They can't use the scientific consensus because it's not on their side. So let's continue with the video and see if he talks a bit more about anecdotes.
Another Albanian, this is a proper wrong on this bloke, he's been deported twice. He's now driving around London in a Ferrari, and we can't get rid of him until his asylum claim is heard.
Okay, so this is a Tory problem that was either manufactured on purpose or through incompetence. And I suspect it's a bit of both with the Tories. So the Labour now have got to clear up the mess. There's a huge backlog of refugees and asylum seekers. But is this the criminal's fault? Well, no, he's kind of, he's going to be making the most of the system. So is this an argument again to not adhere to the European Convention of Human Rights? No, it's another anecdote. This is meaningless. It's nothing. There is no argument here. This is not how we make decisions. You could do this about anything. You could just isolate a specific situation and go, look, this bad person did a bad thing, therefore they shouldn't be here. This is not how democracies, civilizations, this is not how we run the world. Well, it should not be this way anyway. Let's continue.
Are literally being walked all over by foreign criminals, and we're too useless and too gutless to do anything about it whatsoever. And until we leave the European Convention on Human Rights...
Okay, so what is the European Convention of Human Rights? Well, it was established in 1950 in Rome as a reaction to the atrocities of World War II. So it's basically a set of articles that act as a safety net against the excesses of governments. And it's a unique thing to Europe. None of the other continents like Africa, America, Asia have this thing. And essentially it's consisted of policies such as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to assemble and peacefully protest, freedom to have family, and freedom from not being persecuted and tortured from your government. And there was only 173 cases last year in Strasbourg from the UK, and it's a court that's not used that much, but it does act as an incentive for governments to treat their populations in accordance with human rights. And we don't want to set a dangerous precedent by leaving, because the only other two countries that are not in this convention are Belarus and Russia. Both dictatorships, both with terrible human rights records, and both waging a war against a sovereign nation in Ukraine. Do we want to be in that, in that trio? No, we do not. Also, it will diminish our position on the world stage. it will undermine the Good Friday Agreement, it will undermine trade, and it will create a whole slew of issues. So what is the pretext behind this? Well, I honestly think Farage, because he is pro-business, he wants to undermine workers' rights, freedom of speech. He, in his last manifesto / contract, spoke about banning gender ideology. This is state censorship. Also, he wants to ban critical race theory, which is basically just teaching black history. Again, another example of state censorship. This is a very dangerous precedent he wants to set. He does not care about your rights. You've got to be scared of the people in power who are making the decisions. Nigel Farage is now an elected MP. He was very powerful in the Brexit debate. He really pushed that. Is he going to push this debate, and is he going to win now? Is he going to convince enough people that the case against the European Convention of Human Rights is strong enough that we should leave? I hope not. I don't think the public will be convinced. But let's continue with the rest of the video and then conclude.
Get a British law. Leave that ludicrous foreign court. We will have criminals from all over the world making a total mockery of this country. If that's not enough to make you angry, I don't know what is. So we got that.
So there it is. He hits the nail on the head. It's all about getting angry. It's all about the fear of politics. The politics of fear, the politics of hate. That's all he wants you to do, is get angry about these anecdotes, these individual situations and stories, and then demonise immigrants and say, what's the solution? Well, we need to not adhere to the European Convention of Human Rights. Even though this will impact on you, this will undermine your human rights, we need to make this decision. So this is a very dangerous time we live in, when we are actually having this debate whether we should have human rights conventions. So comment below. What do you think the chances are that we will leave the European Convention of Human Rights in the coming years? And what's your opinion on it? Is this going to happen? Is this potentially the new Brexit? Are we talking about the new Brexit here? Comment below, and I'll see you in the next video.